rhythmic tapping sounds from the forge. A blond man works with intensity. Sparks fly from the struck blade. His focused eyes burn with determination. He lets out a guttural roar. The weapon shatters in a violent crash. The title screen emerges from flames. Standing before an ancestor's portrait, a father instructs young Arhan to remember their family's prestigious heritage.
The father explains that despite their current humble life, the caravan family once held unmatched status.
He proudly recounts tales of legendary knights and righteous ancestors who were once favored by the king. With a gentle ruffle of the blond boy's hair, he claims their lineage was chosen to produce generations of swordmasters. The portrait depicts the ancestor as an invincible protector, a legacy the father expects the boy to uphold. Arhan is told that he must eventually take his place as the head of the caravan household. The sunset glows over the village as the father defines this inheritance as the boy's ultimate duty. Golden wheat sways in the wind. Arhan reflects on the heroic stories his father used to tell him about their family's past. Now an adult, Arhan harvests wheat with a sharp, quick slice of his sickle. He considers the idea of noble heritage a common myth used to bolster a family's pride. Arhan sighs, noting that if the stories were true, they wouldn't be living as mere landlords in a poor village. He shares a cheerful moment with the farmers, who respectfully address him as their young master. A hand reaches out to the harvest. Arhan wipes his brow, doubting the authenticity of the idolized figure depicted in the family portrait. He looks at the aging portrait and the family sword, questioning the legends attached to them. A history book remains open, offering no evidence of the grand claims his father made. Exhausted from his research, Arhan falls asleep among books that never once mention his alleged ancestor, Liam Caravan. He concludes that the legends were likely just tall tales meant to give the descendants a sense of importance. A voice calls Arhan from his thoughts. A red-haired villager named Kun invites him to join the others for a snack of warm bread. In the background, a woman checks on a coughing man as Arhan watches the peaceful scene. Arhan smiles, deciding he is happy with his life, even if his family isn't actually famous. He walks through the fields, feeling a deep affection for the people and the place he calls home. He realizes this simple life is the only legacy he truly desires. Arhan runs back to join the villagers. The dream shatters as blood spills across the ground, and a man's life is cruelly extinguished. Arhan stands in silent horror as the world he knew is turned upside down by violence. Blood drips onto the golden wheat, marking the end of his peaceful and complacent existence. Earlier that day, Arhan prepares to head to a neighboring town's market on horseback. He cheerfully offers to pick up whatever supplies the villagers might need while he is away. Kun requests some fruit, and Arhan gladly promises to bring back some apples for him. He surprises a woman by remembering her daughter's upcoming birthday and offering to find a doll for her. Arhan winks confidently, declaring that as the future lord, he makes it his business to know everything about them. The villagers wave goodbye, wishing the young master a safe trip as he rides toward the mountains. Arhan smiles brightly, looking forward to the simple task and the sunset ahead. The wind rustles through the fields. Kun and the older man praise Arhan, noting how his kindness sets him apart from other noblemen. Kun encourages the group to finish their work before the light fails. A sudden, sharp spray of blood cuts through the air as Kun's sentence is brutally interrupted. The woman watches in stunned silence as blood splatters across her face during the sudden assault. She gasps in shock, paralyzed by the horror unfolding right before her eyes. The golden field is stained red as a violent slaughter begins in the peaceful village. A white-haired swordsman approaches through rain. Terrified villagers watch the figure approach. A frightened man demands the stranger's identity. He stands silently amidst the wheat, The white-haired man claims the territory. Invisible blades begin a sudden slaughter. Blood sprays across the darkening sky. He coldly declares the village's destruction. Supplies fall into the dirt unheeded. A single apple rolls away, discarded. Arhan returns to find only corpses and asks why this has happened. He realizes the magnitude of tragedy and wonders if everyone is dead. The elderly butler shields Arhan's eyes and tells the young master not to look. Arhan calls out to the butler in confused disbelief. Arhan refuses to believe his eyes and cries out in agony for the slaughtered villagers. Arhan recalls the moment the white-haired man arrived. He remembers the attacker declaring that the caravans must be erased. A narration notes that the massacre took only 10 minutes. A narration describes the warrior wielding his blade with cold indifference as people flee. The town square becomes a graveyard. A violent strike destroys the architecture. The killer surveys the burning ruins. The swordsman justifies the carnage by stating he is just following orders. A narration explains that the lineage was erased without leaving a trace. The village is consumed by fire. The scene shifts to the manor. Arhan walks through a blood-stained hall. He stands amidst more fallen servants. A sudden gasp escapes his lips. He discovers a gruesome final sight. A sudden sob racks his body. A familiar voice calls his name in the distance. Arhan recognizes his surviving mother and asks if it is her. His mother rushes toward him while screaming his name. She embraces him in relief and tells him she is glad he is safe. Arhan remains frozen in her arms. The survivors cling to each other while someone wonders why. The father stares down and wonders why this is happening. Blood stains the manor's ornate windows. A narration explains that the swordmaster spared Arhan's parents and left them a message. The attacker leaves a terrifying ultimatum to return in a month. The white-haired man orders the family to evacuate the territory if they wish to live. The father demands to know why the killer is doing this. He screams at the stranger and asks what crime they ever committed. The father collapses into deep despair and questions why. The killer offers no further answers. A narration describes the manor grounds falling into silence after the man left. A narration notes that the villagers began to leave their homes. The father's sanity begins to unravel as he recites his duties as a great knight and guardian. A narration notes his helplessness as the Lord while he continues swearing a desperate oath to the heavens. Arhan's mother looks at him tenderly and calls his name. Embracing the blonde boy, she explains she has instructed the butler to prepare a carriage so Arhan can leave the territory and go as far away as possible. Arhan cries out in shock, pleading with her to join him and insisting that they take his father and leave together. She softly explains that his father must stay to face the enemy as the Lord of Caravan until the very end. As Arhan begs her to reconsider, his mother tells him there is something vital he must remember. Gesturing to the ancestor's portrait, she reveals that the stories his father told him of righteous guardians and invincible protectors are false. She grips his shoulders while he weeps, declaring that their history is nothing more than a collection of lies. She makes him promise to never pick up a sword, to survive no matter what, and to never think about revenge. After telling him to live for himself, she hears the butler announce that the carriage is ready, causing Arhan to gasp in surprise. She orders the butler to take Arhan as far away as possible before the attacker returns. The gray-haired butler pulls the boy away, while Arhan lets out a desperate scream for his mother. She closes her eyes as her son's cries echo through the dark woods. The butler insists the young master must go as Arhan continues to scream for his mother. Arhan reaches back toward his mother as they are separated in the night. Standing alone, she tearfully whispers a final declaration of love for her child. Back at the manor, A heavy thud sounds as the father slams his head against the library shelves in despair. He continues striking the wall in agony as a series of dull thuds echo through the quiet room. Blood drips from his forehead as the blond man weeps in total frustration. His wife embraces him from behind and gently asks him to stop suffering alone. The night is filled with the rhythmic rumble of the carriage wheels as it flees. The butler acknowledges Arhan's pain, but insists that he must find the strength to endure this tragedy. He warns that the swordsman is a natural disaster that mere humans cannot hope to overcome. He urges the boy to accept the weight of this tragedy as the horses gallop forward. Explaining that his parents wanted him to live on, the butler is suddenly startled by a loud bang and cries out for the young master. A heavy thump sounds as Arhan leaps from the moving carriage and hits the ground. Arhan sprints back through the woods, deciding he cannot simply leave on his own. He questions how he could ever abandon his parents to such a fate. He continues running through the forest, refusing to run away. Looking at the crossbow on his back, he reasons that even a legendary swordmaster is just a man who will die if an arrow pierces his heart. He reveals that he spent the last month preparing a deadly poison, believing that a single shot could protect his family. Arhan races toward the manor house under a blood-red sky. He arrives to find a horrifying sight that leaves him speechless. A sequence shows a shocked eye and blood dripping from a blade as the truth is revealed. A gruesome sight follows as a severed blonde head is tied to the manor's flagpole. Standing over his mother's body, the white-haired man calls the attempt at resistance foolish. He looks at Arhan and asks if he has come back to embrace death as well. Coldly noting that he had shown mercy before, the killer watches as Arhan lets out a shattered gasp. Arhan lets out a long, tortured scream as he stares at the lifeless body of his mother. Her eyes remain closed in a final, eternal sleep. Crying out that he will kill the stranger, Arhan aims his crossbow with shaking hands. The swordsman's red eye gleams as he orders the boy to die. A sharp thwack sounds as Arhan releases the poison bolt. The attacker easily evades the shot and stands before the grieving boy. The broken weapon falls uselessly to the ground. Arhan collapses to his knees with a heavy thud, utterly defeated as his parents' killer looms over him. He gasps and chokes on his own despair, clutching his throat in agony. The white-haired man remarks that the boy isn't even 18 years old yet. He tells Arhan to consider himself lucky because he will spare his life today, ordering him to drown in his own despair instead. As he walks away, he warns that no trace of the caravan can remain and threatens Arhan against continuing the bloodline. The killer glances back with glowing red eyes, reiterating that he will eventually hunt Arhan down once more. Arhan crawls toward the body of his fallen mother, realizing the horror that his family should not have vanished so cruelly. A close-up reveals the boy's shattered expression as he weeps in total shock. Standing over the grieving child, the white-haired man looks down and remarks how utterly pathetic the sight is. A sudden, choked escapes Arhan as he pulls his mother's lifeless body into a desperate embrace. His tortured scream of "Wah!" echoes across the empty field as he clings to the only person he has left. A brilliant blue light begins to swirl as a mystical sword manifests in the air. Startled by the sudden presence, Arhan looks up as a spectral voice commands him to show some respect. A massive surge of energy erupts from a portrait on the wall as Arhan watches in disbelief. A towering spectral figure with a long beard and fur-lined cloak reveals himself, addressing the boy as his descendant. The scene shifts back to the manor, where a narration explains that every day of that subsequent year was dedicated to sharpening his resolve for vengeance. Narration describes the killer as a peerless blade and the sovereign shield of the realm's stability, while showing blood-streaked halls. Scattered research papers suggest the killer is a sanctified judge of the wicked and a transcendent genius among swordmasters. The white-haired man is identified as Carlos, the master of the 10 swords, the monster who destroyed Arhan's soul and home. Arhan ponders what drove the man to butcher his kin and wonders who is truly pulling the strings from the shadows. A single wooden cross stands in the dirt, marking the immutable reality of the tragedy. A vast graveyard stretches toward the horizon as a narration laments that no answers will bring back the caravan family, who died like dogs. Back in the present, Arhan wonders if the weight of these mysteries has finally shattered his sanity. The blue spectral energy swirls violently around the ancient blade once more. Arhan realizes that an impossible manifestation is unfolding right before his very eyes. The spectral voice repeats its demand for decorum from the young Arhan caravan. The bearded spirit declares that his very blood flows within the boy's veins. Arhan stares at the floating figure he once dismissed as nothing more than a fable. Rain lashes against the manor windows as the atmosphere grows heavy. A narration notes that scholars often speak of those who fall prey to hallucinations born of grief. Arhan senses that this presence is far too heavy and real to be a mere phantom of his imagination. The spirit notes that he can feel the tempest of emotion raging within the boy's chest. The ancestor asks if Arhan is gripped by the fear of madness or paralyzed by the sight of a legendary figure. Arhan tentatively asks if the spirit is truly the patriarch who forged their family name. He stares in awe, identifying the figure as the legendary conqueror, Liam Caravan. Filled with sudden resentment, Arhan asks why the hero of his father's stories waited until the world turned to ash to appear. He shouts in frustration, demanding to know why the ancestor has only chosen to show himself now. With eyes glowing blue with rage, Arhan screams and asks why the spirit allowed everyone to die. Liam Caravan stands with his arms crossed, silently observing the boy's outburst. The patriarch explains that he required proof of Arhan's resolve, warning that revenge is a soul-consuming poison meant only for those willing to burn everything. He admits to watching Arhan and seeing a boy whose talent was so meager it seemed almost hopeless. Liam recalls watching Arhan refuse to drop his blade during training, even as his hands bled every single day. The spirit explains that he witnessed a will that refused to be extinguished by the winds of despair. He notes that the malice in Arhan's gaze has finally ripened into the depth he required for his plans. Liam reveals that his own patience has reached a breaking point regarding those who dared to slaughter his people. Transforming into a dark, menacing silhouette, the spirit declares that his craving to rend the enemy limb from limb is overflowing. He explains that throughout the chronicles of the world, there exists a singular and absolute law. Liam reaches out to the boy, acknowledging that Arhan already knew this law when he chased the ghost of retribution like a madman. He warns Arhan that a swordmaster is a divine anomaly beyond the human ceiling, someone he could never touch alone. Stars twinkle over a dark mountain range, representing a realm of existence beyond the reach of mere prodigies. Carlos is depicted as a titan standing on an unreachable peak, a man whom few could match even in an era of constant slaughter. As rain pours over the stone balcony, the spirit notes that no one in the current age has the strength to end the killer. He warns that as the years pass, the killer's shadow will only grow longer and darker over the world. Arhan's eye twitches as he wonders if justice is truly impossible, and if he must watch his enemy be worshipped as a savior. Clutching his throat in a fit of internal agony, Arhan asks himself if he must remain a helpless spectator once again. Liam Caravan vows to become the boy's foundation and forge him into a blade more terrifying than his enemies, so the last Caravan may execute the murderer. The legendary blade of the Caravan lineage. The bearded spirit commands his blonde descendant to consume his spectral blade. A metallic clicking sounds from the forge. Intense flames roar within the hearth. The narration explains the family's secret ancestry as a blend of human and dwarf. The boy's resolve hardens with intensity. A sudden whoosh sounds as Arhan prepares to temper the glowing blade. The ancestor reveals himself as the origin of the Caravan blacksmithing legacy. The spirit explains that a miraculous trait was passed down through their bloodline, despite their human stature. He clarifies that by literally consuming a sword, a Caravan absorbs the skills and secret arts of its previous masters. This unique ability is identified as the secret foundation behind the family's rise to martial nobility. Arhan reflects on the grotesque nature of this power that was missing from historical family records. Despite his confusion, the boy realizes he is desperate enough to believe the impossible. He decides that doubt is a luxury he can no longer afford in his quest for power. Looking up with intense eyes, Arhan asks for the specific method to devour the steel. The spirit instructs him to heat the metal until the edge becomes soft and yielding. He is told to grind the softened steel between his teeth and swallow it whole. Arhan wonders if he is losing his mind or being led astray by a dark spirit. He decides to seize even the slightest chance at gaining the strength he needs to survive. With a desperate cry, the boy prepares to perform the impossible ritual. Arhan gasps in agony as the white-hot metal begins to sear his throat. A tortured scream erupts from the forge as the boy endures the ritual's heat. A silhouette screams amidst the flames. A sharp clang rings out as Arhan collapses, the shattered blade falling beside him. He continues to scream as the magical fire pulses through his body. The boy lets out a choked "ugh" as he realizes the ritual is finally complete. Arhan lets out one last agonized cry before the scene fades to black. Visions of his fallen family members remind him never to forget the tragedy he witnessed. The image of the white-haired killer haunts his mind as a final warning. His hand grips a sword hilt. Arhan vows to endure any loss of humanity to ensure his mission is successful. He declares his intent to become a master who transcends human limits through pain and vengeance. Chaotic energy surges through the room. Birds chirp as morning light hits. Arhan wakes up with a sharp cry, gasping for air on the workshop floor. He lets out several frantic gasps while realizing he is still alive. Shocked to find himself unharmed, Arhan recalls the vivid sensation of swallowing the molten iron. He wonders if it was all a dream, but finds a sign that points toward reality. Arhan realizes the event was real because he is holding the empty hilt of the consumed sword. Liam Caravan praises the boy's mental strength, noting that many ancestors failed to handle the ritual's agony. The spirit asks if the boy finally accepts the truth of his father's legends and family history. He notes that he is a real presence rather than a product of Arhan's grief, while the boy remains speechless. The boy remains silent before his ancestor. Liam notes that every student of his has bowed, and Arhan formally accepts him as his master. He asks if he has truly inherited the ability to gain power through the consumption of swords, just as his father said. Looking at his body, Arhan admits that he doesn't feel like any physical transformation has occurred. The bearded spirit hesitantly reveals that a significant complication has arisen for the boy's development. He explains that the thinned blood of later generations has weakened Arhan's ability to digest the power within the steel. The spirit clarifies that Arhan cannot yet fully process the immense essence contained within the legendary sword. Arhan is stunned as a glowing blue core manifests within his chest. Arhan kneels before the floating spectral form of Liam Caravan. Arhan formally accepts the spirit as his master, prompting Liam to ask if that is his only response. Arhan expresses gratitude that a secondary path to power remains, a term that piques his ancestors' curiosity. With eyes glowing blue, Arhan clarifies that he simply needs to find swords that match his current capacity, drawing a thoughtful reaction from Liam. Liam hovers above Arhan, advising that the best weapons for their purpose are those that are heavily worn and used. The scene shifts to a massive scrapyard of discarded weapons under a crimson sunset, where Liam instructs the boy to lead the way. Walking through the valley of jagged metal, Liam declares that he will be the one to select the appropriate blades. Liam comments on the gloomy atmosphere, while Arhan notes that such a place would be a paradise for dark mages. Arhan explains that there is no better site for unusable blades, and Liam agrees it is a promising start. Liam reminisces about devouring gore-caked swords and axes from bloody battlefields during his own lifetime. Arhan listens intently as the spirit describes how he used to consume everything he could find with absolute desperation. Gazing over the wreckage, Liam admits that the environment brings back vivid memories of his past. Liam describes the brutal reality of old battlefields where weapons broke endlessly in the struggle for survival. A single brilliant point of light suddenly pierces through the dark shadows of the mountain of scrap. Liam's spectral eyes glow with intensity as he announces that he has found a suitable target. The ancestor points a massive spectral finger toward the shining object, commanding his young descendant to retrieve it. Liam identifies a thin, glowing, needle-like blade as the second sword that Arhan must consume. 1 month later, a silent manor stands under the moonlight as a narration notes the absence of life in the village. A group of intruders cautiously enters the manor, debating whether it was once an abandoned laboratory for a dark mage. 4 armed thugs stride into the grand hall, speculating that a disgraced noble might be hiding within the walls. The intruders note that a distinct aristocratic scent permeates the interior of the manor. A large, bald thug laughs as he relaxes on a sofa, relishing the fact that the property seems to be completely unmanaged. A scavenger with a neck scarf rummages through a cabinet and makes a surprising discovery. The scavenger gleefully informs the bald leader that the presence of fine items suggests a noble's daughter lives there. He holds up a pile of clean, elegant women's clothing, confirming the group's predatory suspicions. The bald leader leers with a disgusting expression, suggesting they can find a different kind of entertainment if they play their cards right. The thugs grow increasingly unruly, demanding a turn with the clothes and searching for a portrait of their potential victim. Arhan suddenly appears and commands them to stop, leaving the intruders visibly startled. The thugs mockingly question Arhan's identity, expressing disappointment that he is not a girl as they had hoped. Arhan gazes coldly at the men, stating that if they are his new neighbors, he is willing to accept them. The bald thug taunts Arhan for coming out of hiding, claiming that nobles like him have no sense of fear. Arhan's eye narrows as a terrifying, cold resolve takes hold of him. The bald leader lunges forward with a weapon, screaming at Arhan and asking if he has a death wish. Arhan's eyes erupt with a fierce, glowing purple energy as the confrontation reaches its peak. A monstrous, serpentine eye filled with flames and malice manifests as a symbol of Arhan's internal power. Arhan strikes with lethal speed, a spray of blood erupting as he counters the intruder's attack. The bald thug spits blood in shock as Arhan identifies them as uninvited guests who have made a fatal mistake. With blood on his face and eyes glowing blue, Arhan clarifies that they are not visitors, but targets for his blade. A promotional banner appears above a shot of the forge, where a roaring fire crackles within the hearth. Flashing back to the forge, Arhan addresses the spirit as his master, while the flames dance behind them. Arhan stares skeptically at the thin needle-like weapon, doubting if it is truly the sword he is meant to consume. He holds the fragile-looking blade, noting its resemblance to a needle rather than a proper martial sword. Arhan worries that the weapon will snap upon impact, but Liam explains that such a reaction is to be expected. The spirit clarifies that this particular blade was never intended for standard slashing or brute force. Liam explains that the weapon was forged for the sole purpose of piercing vitals to end a life instantly. A vision depicts a victim falling after a single, decisive strike from a specialized weapon. An assassin is shown delivering a fatal thrust through an opponent's neck, illustrating the blade's intended use. Arhan realizes that the weapon's effectiveness is limited strictly to thrusting maneuvers. Liam notes that Arhan's expression suggests he would prefer a more familiar spear, causing the boy to flinch. Liam explains that the memories dwelling within the thin blade are the most useful thing for Arhan's weak young body. Liam notes that the sword's previous owner took over 2,000 lives by herself. Looking at a vision of the past owner, Liam clarifies that she achieved her feats with a woman's body that was even frailer than Arhan's. Liam commands Arhan to show respect to the sword and begin devouring it. As the metal heats, the spirit notes that what dwells within the blade is the heavy, solemn weight of a life. He explains that by inheriting the woman's memories, Arhan will gain many things. Embers crackle on the stone floor. A child remembers a burning manor. When the 10-year-old girl named Mary opens her eyes, she finds that everything has changed. Her parents were reduced to unrecognizable ash in the fire. After being told she barely survived, the child whispers softly to herself. Lying in a hospital bed, Mary whispers that she wishes she had died with her parents. The orphanage chapel features a large statue of the goddess of fire. Mary is crushed to find the orphanage worships fire as salvation. Now older, Mary realizes she still hasn't escaped the flames. Days in the orphanage chapel are peacefully horrific. Children whisper that Ashy's face was cursed by the goddess. Other girls whisper about how gross the marks on her face look. Surrounded by cruel insults, Mary remains silent. With dark resolve, Mary whispers that she wants to die. Moonlight shines on a blade she hopes will end her hatred. Mary's hard gaze anticipates the future. A man's swordsmanship appears rough and crude. Mary watches an old man train alone. He was a former wandering knight who worked at the orphanage for a long time. Mary approaches him in the forest. Mary asks the man how she can become like him. Looking up, the girl declares that she wants to learn his skills. The knight warns Mary that his path does not help with living, especially for a girl like her. He states that a blade like his will only end up hurting her. The man tells her to go inside, but she insists on learning. Mary clenches her chest, vowing she will never be afraid of fire again. The knight walks away into darkness. Standing by a barrel of weapons, the knight tells Mary to pick any of them, and he will teach her if she can swing it. Mary stares intently at the discarded blades. Mary asks if she must swing the weapon, and the knight asks what else she would do with it. Clenching a thin needle-like blade, Mary says she will use it to fight back. Looking the knight in the eye, Mary vows to become whatever it takes. In the present, Arhan strikes with a first thrust, clarifying that the intruders are targets rather than guests. The bald intruder gasps in pain. The thug falls to the ground. Arhan stares down the remaining thugs. The intruders are shocked, questioning what happened and if he is kidding. Arhan prepares to strike again, declaring that they don't need to talk anymore. Liam watches Arhan, noting that he has only taught his descendant one thing over the past month. He explains that he provided a physical training routine to prevent Arhan from tiring after hours of running. Liam admits he did not teach Arhan a single sword technique during their training. The spirit realizes Arhan is digesting the power properly because he can execute a perfect thrust.
Arhan holds his blade with resolve.
The intruder lets out a final cough. The fallen thug gasps for air, a target reachable only by a blade slid precisely between the ribs into his lung. Standing over his victim, Arhan reflects on the impossibility of his own skill, given his lack of formal training. His hand tightens around the thin blade he assimilated a month ago, a weapon that once belonged to another. Visions of Mary, the red-haired woman with a scarred face, flood into Arhan's mind as their spirits align. In a distant memory, Hegel teaches young Mary that a blade's weight and rhythm are cold necessities for survival. Snowy branches frame a past where swordsmanship was taught far from the rigid doctrines of academic schools. Hegel's style was born from the lawless, wild spirit he cultivated while wandering as a hedge knight. Through the winter storms, the young girl practiced relentlessly to escape the deep shadow of her own fears. Despite the heavy scar surrounding her eye, a rare, bright smile lights up Mary's face during her training. She looks upon her mentor with deep respect, fully admiring Hegel's unique way of the sword. As time passes, Hegel lies weak in his sickbed, telling Mary that the hour for her departure is near. Clasping her hand tightly, the dying knight implores her to go out and witness the vast breadth of the world. With labored breath, Hegel looks up one last time to deliver his final lesson to his devoted pupil. Tears stream down Mary's face as she listens to her name being spoken by her mentor for the last time. In the quiet, moonlit room, Mary bows her head in mourning, knowing she owes her entire life to him. Years later, Mary stands as a renowned mercenary amidst a field of those who dared to challenge her. The legend of the stitching gypsy looms over Arhan, the legacy of the blade now flowing through his veins. Arhan's blue eye widens as Mary's life experiences flood his mind, a phenomenon his forefather called the summoning. Paralyzed by terror, the wounded leader crawls backward, desperately pleading for his life to be spared just once. Arhan hovers the needle blade over the cowering man, ignoring the frantic, stuttering cries for mercy. Without a word, Arhan plunges the weapon downward, silencing the man's desperate begging in an instant. A drop of blood hangs in the air as a ghostly voice commands Arhan to finally finish the job. Kneeling in the pooling blood, the boy realizes with cold clarity that he has just taken a human life. Staring into the void, Arhan finds the experience strangely hollow, feeling neither the weight of guilt nor the sting of horror. From a distant perspective, the boy stands alone in the dark hall, consumed entirely by the tactical reality of the fight. Looking at the dead leader, Arkin knows he only won because he was underestimated, a mistake his enemies won't repeat. His blue eyes narrow with focus, acknowledging that the remaining thugs now hold the advantage in numbers. Despite their numerical superiority, the remaining intruders hesitate, unsure of how to face the boy standing before them. Liam watches from the shadows, noting that the intruders have become completely paralyzed by a sudden, overwhelming dread. The ancestor explains that while a little fear is helpful, an excess of it blinds the mind and creates unstoppable illusions. Glowing with a murderous aura, Arhan stands ready, as Liam identifies him as a butcher incarnate. A sudden blur of motion cuts through the air as the boy launches himself at his next targets. Arhan spots a fatal opening, ignoring the terrified shouts of a thug telling him to stay back. A large man swings his club in a desperate rage, screaming a frantic vow to slaughter the young boy.
With inhuman speed, Arhan ducks beneath the massive swing, his movements a blur of lethal intent.
The boy's eyes flare with blue energy as he maneuvers behind his opponent with predatory grace. A spray of blood erupts as Arhan's blade finds its mark, piercing through the back of the intruder's neck. Driplets of blood drift past Arhan's cold gaze as the memories of Hegel's teachings resurface in his mind. Recalling the lessons meant for a smaller frame, Arhan knows he cannot allow this confrontation to drag on. The mustachioed intruder lets out a terrified, guttural scream as he realizes the speed of the boy's approach. Arhan moves like a phantom, the needle blade leading a path of destruction through the dark manor hall. Following the ancient strategy, Arhan prepares to end the life of his enemy within the first few exchanges. The needle blade pierces deep into the throat of the mustachioed man, ending his scream before it can finish. The man's eye bulges in shock and agony as the cold steel claims another life in the darkness. With a final, decisive movement, Arhan runs the man through, a chorus of screams echoing in the background. In a vision of the past, Mary executes the same lethal maneuver against a group of desperate attackers. Terror reflects in the eyes of a mercenary as he watches his comrades fall to an invisible, lightning-fast strike. Older Mary flows through the battlefield, her innate lifeness serving as her greatest asset in the dance of death. Performing a spectacular acrobatic flip, she maneuvers effortlessly above the frantic swings of her enemies. Mary descends from the air like a vengeful shadow, her blade poised to strike with absolute finality. A spray of blood erupts as a sharp slash sounds. The thug collapses as Arhan stands tall. Trembling with terror, the intruder insults the boy while questioning the terrifying sight before him. Arhan's shadowy silhouette looms, causing the man to wonder what kind of monster he is facing. The quiet night air is filled with a soft hush. The rhythmic clatter of digging echoes as Arhan works in the moonlit forest. Exhausted from his labor, Arhan listens as Master Liam asks if his doubts have finally vanished. Liam explains that Arhan's training allows him to easily defeat multiple untrained thugs alone. The Master explains that their lineage grows significantly stronger during the heat of life-threatening combat. Arhan stares at his hand in awe, realizing his master spoke the absolute truth. Arhan feels his body becoming incredibly flexible as Mara's vivid combat memories flood his mind. The boy finally understands the resolve and heart Mary possessed while fighting against the world. Closing his eyes, Arhan wonders if he is finally accessing his true power. The burning blade represents the power of digestion, making Arhan stronger as he understands his opponents. Liam emphasizes his honesty, stating he never lies when it comes to the sword. The spirit warns that the days ahead will be filled with agony and immense hardships. Master Liam asks his descendant if he is truly prepared to continue down this path. Clenching his fist, Arhan vows to eventually put his blade to Carlos's throat. Arhan declares his absolute resolve to move forward regardless of how difficult the path becomes. He lets out a sharp, startled gasp, looking up to call out for his master. Gasping for air, Arhan clings to a steep cliff face and questions the path's direction. Hanging precariously from the rock, the boy asks if this is truly the right way. Small stones tumble down the cliffside as Arhan climbs toward a lone tree. Looking out over the vast valley, the boy questions the reality of his situation. Liam mocks Arhan's sudden return to doubt, asking where his determined gaze from last night went. The master notes that Arhan's skepticism is a core trait he has possessed since childhood. Historical records define the initial ranks of sword beginner and the talented sword walker. The narrative describes the battlefield influence of sword runners and the tide-turning power of experts.
Above all these ranks sit the swordsmen revered as actual gods.
A vast army of armored knights kneels in silent, deep reverence. Highlighting the realm of the heart sword, Liam demands an answer from his young descendant.
Liam asks Arhan where he belongs among these ranks, and Arhan admits he knows his current limits. A core of energy signifies the legendary formation of a mana heart.
Arhan admits he doesn't even qualify as a beginner yet, drawing praise for his self-objectification.
Liam confirms Arhan is an amateur who has not yet entered the threshold of swordsmanship.
Arhan is stunned into silence when his master suddenly mentions creating a mana heart right now.
A sudden jolt of alarm strikes him as he asks if they are risking everything now. Rocks crumble as Arhan yells about the lethal danger of making a single wrong move.
Arhan reflects on easier methods like alchemist potions or mana injections from knights. Even noble ladies who learn self-defense can easily form hearts through these common methods. His muscles strain as he questions why they must avoid the easy path for this ordeal. Arhan grits his teeth in frustration, stating he truly cannot understand the logic of this method. Liam agrees that common ways are not difficult, but they offer no reason for Arhan's path. The master explains that a human heart can only ever reach the realm of humans. Liam reveals that one specific thing is required to reach the path of a swordmaster. A cold metallic heart symbolizes the essential need for a heart of steel. Liam commands Arhan to drive himself to death's brink until his body demands its own mana heart. The spirit recalls that only a tiny few descendants survived this gruesome and painful process.
Those who overcame the agony of the training successfully became renowned swordmasters.
The mountain wind howls as Liam asks his descendant if he finally feels motivated. His hand grips the jagged rock. Arhan hangs from the cliffside, declaring his grip is more than enough. Master Liam reassures his descendant that he never lies about the sword. Arhan looks on as he is told his mana heart will be unique.
Stones tumble down the massive cliff.
Lamps glow in a quiet village.
Tavern patrons discuss a neighborhood where no one has lived for a year.
One man explains that a dangerous entity has made every intruder vanish.
Rumors circulate about mist monster waves or warlocks experimenting with magic. A traveler is warned to avoid the western village if he wants to live.
A hooded man sits in silence.
A sudden tap sounds as the man is told he will surely die.
A wet cough sounds as the man spits blood into his hand.
Wiping the blood, the bearded man decides that the village is a good place.
Arhan continues his training, hanging from the cliff by only his left hand.
He recalls defeating the mansion intruders even while his body was completely drained.
The boy strains while dragging a massive boulder despite his intense muscle pain. Arhan pushes through the grueling physical labor every single day without fail.
Fingers dig into the crumbling stone. Narrating his progress, Arhan admits he still has not formed a mana heart.
Exhausted, he sits against a tree and lets out a long sigh.
A soft swoosh sounds as he raises his hand to examine it. A subtle smile forms as he realizes a change is clearly taking place. A heavy iron ball swings nearby.
Arhan's focus sharpens, identifying the shift in his physical capabilities. He notes that his basic senses have become incredibly sharp.
He dodges a wide, heavy swing. A thug swings a massive chain.
Arhan's reflexes outpace his simple senses of sight and hearing.
He finds his judgment and concentration have reached a level of extreme clarity. Steel sparks against the heavy chain.
His combat speed has become incomparable to what it was before his training.
Focusing on a single point, Arhan prepares to strike with his needle blade.
The thug freezes in a moment of pure, wide-eyed shock. He slides beneath the heavy strike.
For a brief moment, it feels as if time has stopped for everyone but him.
Arhan's movement remains fluid even as the world seems to stand still. He maneuvers past the chaotic swing. The boy finds an opening and drives the needle into his opponent's neck.
Rapid strikes pierce the enemy's chest.
Blood sprays as the needle strikes. Arhan searches for the core reason behind this sudden change in his power. He reflects on achieving this feat without a mana heart or the rank of beginner. He credits the needle's power while acknowledging how astonishing his progress feels.
Arhan asks about the power of the next level, but Liam dismisses him as a novice.
Blue energy flows through the dark. Liam explains that forming a mana heart will put Arhan on equal footing with the needle's owner. He describes the mana heart's path as a way to construct domains for offense and defense. An armored knight represents the rank of swordwalker. Liam warns that the difference between a beginner and a walker is vast. Master Liam asks if his explanation satisfies the boy's curiosity, and Arhan confirms that he finally understands. Looking toward the horizon, Arhan reflects on the powerful man who recently settled within this territory.
A rhythmic tapping sounds against the rocky ground as the mysterious intruder makes his presence known.
Surrounded by a swirling aura of blue mana, the man's identity as a swordwalker is questioned.
The traveler with the brown beard and piercing eyes reveals his face, looking forward with calm intensity.
Master Liam warns that this opponent exists on a plane far beyond the simple thugs Arhan has defeated previously.
When the spirit suggests retreating to avoid certain defeat, Arhan firmly rejects the idea as a viable option. The narrative reflects on how the once vibrant land has grown desolate and unrecognizable over the long years. Arhan looks out over the valley, noting that this land is the only place remaining that holds the memories of everyone he lost. Liam remains silent, watching his descendant with a contemplative expression. The master explains that in the Iron Kingdom, power is the only currency, and even simple wishes are luxuries the weak cannot afford. The moon shines over the valley as Liam emphasizes that Arhan must grow strong so that no one can ever mock his words again. A sharp blue-tinged light erupts as a blade is drawn. Facing Arhan in the open field, the bearded traveler warns the boy that attempting to run away would be a mistake. Moving with frightening speed, the man demands that Arhan turn around and show his back. Their gazes lock in a tense standoff as the intruder promises to cut Arhan down on the spot